This meeting will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll.
Veronic. Here. Baylor.
Here.
Castor.
Here.
Holman.
Here.
Sardina.
Here.
And Mr. Benjamin is excused.
Is there anyone desiring to be heard? Come forward in your name, please.
Hello, I am Susanna Schroeder. My address is on file with the village. But I'm your library director. Hello, we've never met. You and I haven't. But I just wanted to talk to you briefly that on Saturday, we are having Train Festival at the library from 11 until 2. And it's going to be a really amazing community-wide event. We're partnering with the Clark House, and I also wanted to just take a moment to give some thank yous as well. So Brookfield Fire has been amazing. I've been working with Corey Suko to make sure that some of our safety measures are going to be in place so that we're going to have a really fun, safe event. Chief Zalewski has also been really a great partner in this, as well as the DPW. They're going to be helping me with barriers. And then Ben has also been invaluable. This poor guy has had to listen to me a few too many times, you know, kind of a little bit of troubleshooting. He's an amazing resource, and we're super lucky to have him in Butler. But I just wanted to remind everybody, it's going to be a really great day. We're going to have 2 different model train companies there. We're going to have some cookie decorating. We're going to be highlighting our local history and kind of train resources. And I just want everybody to have a good time, and it would be really awesome if you guys showed up. So, hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
About my report. Is there anyone else desiring to be heard? None. Consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposition, say nay. Motion passes. Communications.
None.
Committee reports, building board.
Building board met just a few minutes ago and approved an occupancy for Hooked MKE located at 4788 North 126th Street. Also Northern Novelty, 4820 North 125th, and a fence permit for Tina Jekyll at 5022 North 126th. End of report.
Thank you. Community Foundation met. We talked about the basic building and grounds, what needs to be done maintenance wise, the upcoming Train Fest, which was just mentioned, and filling Bob Tark's position. And a report, Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met a few minutes ago. We approved March invoices of $149,050.73. Also reviewed and approved the March statement of revenue and expenditures and pass it on to the full board approval and the report.
Thank you. Library Board.
Library Board met Tuesday, the 14th at 6 o'clock. The meeting was shortened and moved to the ladies' room due to a pending tornado, and that happens to be the tornado shelter. As stated just a few minutes ago, Train Fest is coming up this Saturday from 11 to 2. We have Brews for Books, September 12th. The Waukesha County Library Standards was approved. Also approved was a allowable cost worksheet for the Bridges library system. Again, it was a short meeting in the report.
Thank you. Public Safety.
Public Safety met this evening at 5 p.m. Very thorough, extensive meeting, and amongst which were some personnel updates, a number of anniversaries, which demonstrated some longevity happily occurring within our department. A lot of aggressive training is continuing, and plans for this year's National Night Out on August 4th have begun. For the rest, I sincerely encourage you to watch the recording of it on YouTube. And a report.
Thank you. Report of the Administrator.
Just a couple of notes. The past week, we experienced a lot of rain and a lot of severe weather. As was mentioned by Trustee Sardina, I greatly appreciate all of the work that the fire department, police department, and DPW put in. I was on the phone with them constantly. I'm sure Brian was sick and tired of all of my text messages and phone calls during that time, making sure that all of the village property was safe, but also that we were monitoring the river. And we were obviously going through all of the streets, making sure that there was no flooding, no trees down, no power lines having any issue. We did have to remove one large tree prematurely just because the homeowner it was a street tree, and the homeowner had reported that it was swaying in the wind rather substantially, where the root ball was actually coming up, and they were concerned about their home. So we did prematurely take that down just to be safe. But no other damage really was done besides the flooding at the lower park and some wood chips that were displaced at the upper park. The village audit has been completed with all the documents being supplied to the auditors. They are now going to be preparing their financial statements and helping us submit our Form C to the state, and also the PSC report that is due annually in May. We are at the very early stages of taking inventory at the upper and lower park. Because of the issues that we've had with consistent flooding down there, we've talked with our engineers a little bit to see if there's anything that we can do at the lower park to make it a little bit more resilient, try to see if there's anything that we can do down there, just with making it more attractive to families and whatnot, whether that's getting rid of Diamond 2 because that's the least used diamond, and trying to do maybe more walking trails, making it into, again, some type of recreational area that is currently not being used for. It's just kind of an open field. Just again, preliminary, looking at what other communities are doing. Then we are also finishing up the plan commission updates with zoning and setbacks. So that should be coming forward soon. I just looked over and approved Caitlin's most recent memo with regards to that. So end of report.
And thank you again for everyone that helped out during the rain. I know that a lot of it, several days of it. So I know a lot of staff was working quite,
Fortunately, it won't rain like that for another 100 years.
let's hope so. Thank you
Don't
again.
put that
on
out
We
there.
got in August, but
Yeah, forget.
All right, continuing. At this time, I'd like to do a public hearing for an application for conditional use for Rebecca Peasy, owner of Zola Zone, to open a pet training recreation business located at 5202 North 126th Street, Butler, Wisconsin, 53007, pursuant to Chapter 54, Article 5, Section 54-358 of the Butler Municipal Code of Ordinances. The property is zoned M1 Industrial, and I'll open that at 6:09. Is there anyone that would like to provide comment on that? No speakers. I'm going to close it at 6:09. New business. Ceremonial swearing in of newly elected trustees.
all right, Mr. Baranik and Mr. Baylor, front and center, please.
You good?
They're all dressed up today, too. All right, if you can please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, having been elected or appointed to the office of village trustee,
Been elected or appointed to office of the village trustee,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon duties thereof,
I swear or affirm
I swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin
and the Village of Butler Code of Ordinances,
and the Village of Butler Code of Ordinances,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office
of said office
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Perfect. Thank you, sirs.
Take your shot before we do that again.
Thank you.
What happens when you do that?
Item B, discussion and possible action on an application for conditional use for Rebecca Peasy, owner of Zola Zone, to open a pet training recreation business located at 5202 North 126th Street, Butler, Wisconsin, pursuant to Chapter 54, Article 5, Section 54-358 of the Butler Municipal Code of Ordinances. The property is zoned M1 Industrial.
Yes, so Rebecca is here in the audience today if you have any questions for her. But this is replacing the all Paws In dog training facilities. So it is kind of a like for like in a way where they had dog training. She's going to be doing pet training and recreation. They are requesting the conditional use permit. We did make an adjustment to the conditional use permit based off of the Plan Commission's feedback. I believe it's now going to be, the hours of operation are going to be 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. To kind of match what the park's closing time is. And also, we really haven't had too much of an issue with the current tenant with the barking of the dogs and whatnot. And we also do have a animal boarding facility across the street from them. And we have not received any complaints from any residents or businesses with regards to barking at that business. So the Plan Commission and Village Administration was comfortable amending the hours of operation. Anything besides that, we have the CUP in the packet, so you could look over all of the conditions that were applied to the business. And if you have any questions for me, please let me know. But this is kind of a like for like in a way for this facility.
And I know there was no, at the Plan Commission, there was no public speaking. No one publicly spoke about it.
Where were you before?
So we were in Ridgefield, across from Cabela's
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's on the other side.
on Helston Drive.
And I just want to also state that this is like, it's not a doggy daycare. It's not, it's private access.
Yeah. So
For your
somebody
facility.
Can rent the space from me online. They have to fill out forms to do that. And then it's just them bringing their dogs to the facility. So once they rent it, no one else can rent it. So it's a private indoor play space for them. So we have a few people that like to rent it early before work and exercise their dogs that way versus going out for walks, especially when we have, Walters.
Is there any exterior
Rebecca,
component to that property?
can I have you to step up there? Thank you.
Is there any exterior?
No.
There is, okay, yeah, all right. That was my concern is the,
outside and then come into the facility.
yeah, just the noise that comes from the regular doggy daycare type places was my only concern, which is,
Yeah,
it's not a concern.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use for Rebecca. He's the owner of Zoila Zone for the pet training and recreation business at 5202 North 126th Street.
Second.
I heard Mark and Eric.
No.
Oh,
Mike.
Mike, sorry. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposition, say nay. Motion passes. You're all set. Item C, presentation by Ariana Schmidt on behalf of Ehlers for 2026 to 27 capital funding and discussion and possible action on the options presented.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
All right. So I believe you all have this presentation in your packet. This is what we'll be walking through this evening. This is really meant to be interactive, so if you have questions, please feel free to stop me along the way. Looks like Ben's also got it up on the board over there. So really tonight, the intent of this presentation is to talk through funding options for your 2026 and 2027 capital improvement plan. So we'll start on slide number 2, just to give you an overview of what we plan to talk through. Really what we're going to do to start is look at your existing debt profile before issuing any new debt. We'll address the upcoming net tax levy drop in your debt service levy in 2027 and how to address that. We'll look at some various options in terms of what you can do to fund these new projects. And then another item we're really going to focus on is the fund balance of both your borrowed money fund and your water revenue bonds. So those are both funds that are made up of debt proceeds from prior issues in past years that have not yet been fully spent down. So the good news there is it's basically cash that you have to use within a certain period of time in order to avoid arbitrage liability. And basically that means you can then pay for some of your projects this year and next year with cash on hand, therefore reducing the amount of debt that you need to issue to fund said projects. tax. So we'll talk about what that looks like and overall what that means for addressing that net tax levy drop and where your GO debt capacity will stand. So first, before we get into any new debt, we wanted to take a look at what your existing debt profile looks like. So what you see here on the left-hand side is your total general obligation debt service payments. Going left to right, this looks at calendar year 2026, what you would have adopted for 2026 budget. The village did issue a short-term bank note of about $225,000 at the end of last year prior to adopting the budget. That was mainly to help address the drop from 25 to 26 in your net tax levy. One of the main goals of the village is to keep a level net tax levy, meaning whatever amount you levy to support your debt service payments, you want to be level year over year. So you're not seeing a roller coaster effect where it spikes one year, drops the next. So when we look at structuring new debt, we really try to layer that in to keep that level. So one strategy that the village used was to issue some funds later in the year to help address that drop. Additionally, where you see the negative numbers, you have other sources that pay into your debt service payments beyond your tax levy. So storm, sewer, and water all pay into this. Ultimately, that's what gets us to about 3/4 of the way to the right, your net tax levy column. So you can see in 2026, that net tax levy is about $795,000. Without issuing any new debt this year, come next year, you'll have a drop down to about $509,000. Again, that's that roller coaster effect we want to avoid, and we'll talk about how we can structure this new debt to layer that in with minimal impact. Any questions on your existing debt profile before we dive forward? All right, I'll keep moving. So before we look at the specific capital improvement plan, I did want to go through your options as a whole as to what we've addressed. So option one, to issue debt to fund your projects, is going to the open securities market. This is what the village has done many times in years past. Typically, we recommend this method when it's over $1 million in par issue, mainly because there are higher costs associated with issuing debt. You have to prepare an official statement, that's the village's offering document, and there's a variety of key players that are involved in that process. So due to the larger cost of issuance, you want to make sure the justification is there in terms of your cost savings. Typically, you'll receive the lowest interest rate when you go to market, but again, you want to make sure that cost savings is offset by the added cost of issuance. Other options, let's say we're looking in this case, as you'll see here, at issuing less than $1 million, we typically recommend one of two routes, either a bank note or the state trust fund loan program offered by the state's BCPO. Bank note method, you can really do in two manners. A lot of communities like to work with their local bank where they hold deposits, and they just say, we're going to go to them, ask them for a rate, and we'll issue debt with them. Others like to submit a request for proposal to multiple banks to make sure you can say, we did our due diligence, we got the lowest interest rate possible, and go forward in a competitive sale. On the other hand, if you don't want to work with the banks that aren't always as familiar with working with municipalities, you can use the state's state trust fund loan program, which you have used in the past. Biggest thing here is the tax rates or the interest rates are set at a standard, whether it's tax exempt or taxable debt. So I've included the charts right here that shows what current interest rates are. The debt that we're looking at issuing is in the 6 to 10 year range. That interest rate is about 5.75%. And when we get to the table on the next slide, I'll explain why we're recommending the state trust fund loan over the bank note, and Ben will provide some additional context to that as well. But just wanted to show you what those rates are currently today. All right, so now we're going to talk about this year's CIP and what funding these various projects looks like. Ben, before I get into details of our payment sources, do you want to talk about any of the projects specifically?
So this year, we are obviously doing we're continuing the road construction project along with the work on 124th Street with regards to the sanitary sewer and some of the storm sewer, with the holes in one of the sanitary sewers and the lining of some of the storm. We are also looking at using the borrowing and the excess revenues to pay for the water tower repair, where I had cut the board informed of the riser issue that was found a couple years ago that we're now coming to address. So those costs are kind of built into what we are looking at funding this year. So kind of what we're looking at is including some of that. And Ariana is going to go into detail a little bit with the purple text kind of at the very bottom of that first section of the table. But that's kind of what we're looking at funding this year is the water tower, the sewer work that's getting done on 124th Street, along with the road construction and water main replacement program.
So in terms of repayment sources, this is not all funded by the levy. There are water projects and sewer projects as well. What we did want to address before we looked at issuing new debt was those funds in that borrowed money fund, or the BMF fund, as you see it depicted here, and then your water revenue bonds. So we have known fund balance on hand that must be spent in the next 1 to 2 years. So we took a look. I know the village had hired an individual at Ellers to do an arbitrage analysis to say how much of this needs to be spent and when. So that's why you see in the cash source section of the table, about 2/3 of the way down, you can see we're spending about $787,000 of cash on hand from your borrowed money fund. That largely comes from issuance of additional proceeds left from 2024 and 2025. And then about $333,000 that remains from your 2024 water revenue bond issue. So because of those two outstanding fund balances, you're able to downsize the amount of debt you would otherwise need to issue by about $1 million. Additionally, the sewer utility is planning to use some funds on hand for the sewer portion of the project. Part of that was budgeted for. Another portion is coming from some additional funds on hand.
And Ariana, I'm just going to jump in here. So with the audit, it's the final numbers aren't out yet, but in 2025 we had budgeted basically what I'll call a structural deficit, where it's not really a structural deficit, but we had the funds, the net position getting reduced by about $100,000 because of some of the rate issues that we had discussed during the budgeting process. That is looking like it's actually going to be more of like a $20,000 net position difference instead of the $100,000. So we actually brought in and saved enough to about like $80,000 than what we had originally planned. And then this year we're only budgeting for about $25,000 of the shortfall. Again, just to try to keep the sewer rates in check and not rising as fast as they otherwise would. So when we combine the funds on the lack of the shortfall plus what we have on hand and what we had budgeted for this year, we don't really have to worry about borrowing for it. I kind of had worked that all out in a spreadsheet to show that we don't really need to worry about borrowing too much for these sewer projects.
So all of that leads to what you see here in the table under sources of funding, that we're funding about $1.3 million of this CIP with cash from those three various sources that we've discussed. These are one-time sources, so don't expect to see this BMF fund at this level most likely going forward, something that you can take advantage of this year. And then the remainder would be funded by issuance of general obligation debt. Now, most of the general obligation debt will be to fund the water portions of this CIP. And then you also see that portion in purple that's titled 2027 capital projects. So that's about $275,000. And where that dollar amount comes from is we took a look at the structure of your existing net tax levy, understanding all of the debt that's being issued this year will be paid for by your water revenues. Therefore, no levy would be paying in. And as we saw on that existing debt profile, you have a drop of about $275,000 in your net tax levy. So rather than having that drop occur next year, you could issue up to $275,000 of debt this year alongside in this issuance to fund future projects for next year while keeping a level tax impact, meaning you won't see an increase in your taxes for debt service, but you'll be receiving an additional $275,000 to keep on hand to fund projects for next year where you otherwise would have had to issue debt in the future. Does that all make sense in terms of why we've showed these numbers the way that they appear?
And that's not a requirement. The board can choose to ignore the $275,000 that was put in place by Ellers, kind of just to show the possibility of issuing it. And again, that number can flex up and down. And kind of what I had brought up when I was in the middle of my horrible illness a couple weeks ago is we had purposely tried to use the funds from the sale of the ambulance to pay down the ambulance debt so then we can reduce the tax levy on residents. What I was kind of setting up is with this discussion, we will see a rather large drop in the debt levy next year of that $275,000. So if the board chose, we could reduce it by the amount of what we would have reduced it by paying off the ambulance payment. So we would reduce the tax levy by that, while then keeping those funds on hand and adding that to the the fund balance in the general fund instead of spending those funds to pay off that debt. So the tax impacts overall for the village would actually be the same, but we'd be able to keep the excess revenue from that in the general fund balance for future use. So if you are following kind of what I'm trying to say is basically the tax implications would be the same if we chose to reduce that 275,000 to something more like 100,000. The tax levy would then decrease in response to that.
And I do have a table that shows you what the tax impact looks like year over year if you were to issue this full amount. So that'll be coming too. But before I show you that table, the one other piece I did want to touch on here is why we've shown the $577,000 of GO debt being funded by a state trust fund loan rather than a bank note. So Ben, I'll let you speak to that.
So the bank note, as you recall, last year we were going through our bank that we keep all of our money at, and they had us go and do the attorney, like we hired bond counsel, we went through that, we paid for that, and then they said that the resolution that we passed wasn't what they wanted, even though they signed off on it, and so they made us pass another resolution. So it was kind of like we, in essence, wasted that money going through and getting the bond counsel. There was a lot of behind the scenes work that I had to do to ensure that we were following all applicable laws with the SEC and whatnot. So the state trust fund loan is with the state. We've done it before. It's very easy to accomplish. Yes, the interest rates are a little bit higher. However, there's a much more security knowing that the debt is issued in the proper manner versus going through the bank that hasn't traditionally worked with municipalities, or I'll just say villages specifically, on their debt issuance. So that's kind of my opinion on why I would advise against the bank note, is just the ease and the security that you have with the state trust fund loan.
Yeah.
There's no other comments on that table. I'll show you what we're proposing for the structure on table 6.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So getting all the way back up to the very first line is our net tax levy is going to drop 286,000 in 2027. Could that be explained? Did I
That's
miss?
just based on your existing debt profile. So there's existing debt that's maturing that therefore drops off. So if you don't issue new debt, that maturing debt is no longer part of the debt profile.
And that was a result of the issuance of last year because of the shift to the Brookfield Fire Department happening. We needed to find the money in the budget, so we borrowed for the capital projects for this year. So that shot the debt service levy up. And now that's coming off because that was a 1-year borrowing.
So in table 6, you'll see that's part of why we're showing the 275,000 for capital projects only being
Ariana,
structured over.
I'm sorry, like I did the thing, but it just shows me a white screen.
Oh, that's strange. Sometimes PDF or Adobe will freeze on me, so I don't know if you can close out and reopen it.
Let me try that. Keep going.
Okay, no problem. But if you have it in front of you, it's table 6. But basically what this is showing is that the water portion of the debt of the 577,000 to be repaid by the water utility, we have structured over a period of 10 years for roughly about $40,000 of principal and interest payments over that 10-year period. On the other hand, the 275,000 for capital projects in 27, that we are proposing to issue for a term of 1 year. Therefore, meaning that total principal and interest payment would be paid off in full in 2027. Therefore, addressing that otherwise drop of 280-some thousand that you had mentioned. Okay. I will say that this is a request, though. That is the one thing with the state trust fund loan program is we do have to request the structure. If you don't request a special structure, they just do level principal and interest payments as we've shown on the water side. We have seen this granted before, so we don't foresee it to be an issue, just not something I can guarantee. So as you'll see at the end when I have a proposed timetable outlined, the next step in the process would be for me to meet with the state and find out if they're open to this structure. Because if not, we'd likely want to look at a bank note because you don't want to structure this $275,000 over multiple years when the intent of issuing it is to address your net tax levy drop next year. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
So maybe it'll help a little bit more if we turn to the next slide, which is really this tax impact analysis. So on the left-hand side in blue, this is the same table you saw at the very beginning that showed your existing debt profile. So what it looks like today without issuance of new debt. That's where you see in 2027 that drop of $286,000 in your net tax levy. Working our way from left to right in the orange, you can see the addition of that new debt from the state trust fund loan that we're looking at in 2026. You can see the increase in 2027 of your net tax levy of about $326,000 and the water portion being paid for by the water revenues, meaning that portion is not hitting your net tax levy. That therefore then addresses the drop from 26 to 27, where you now see $795,000 as your net tax levy in both years. Therefore, structuring in this new debt eliminates the drop from 26 to 27. However, you will see next or the following budget cycle, 2028, there is a future drop. So basically saying the same thing we're going through right now will be occurring again next year because again, you have that existing debt dropping off. So not to say that's a problem, it's just to say when we look at issuing debt this time next year for future projects, you likely won't have the large amount of cash on hand from your borrowed money fund and your 2024 water revenue bonds. Therefore, meaning if we're looking to issue a larger amount of debt, we can structure out that drop so that no longer is an issue going forward.
And Ari, and I think that with that, we're going to be, we have our road construction project for next year that will increase, we're not going to have that cash on hand. So it's going to be a normal, like over $1 million, budgeting. So that 290 may not be 290, depending on how all the expenses come out.
Exactly. So those will be things we'll be able to address permanently in the future. But for the next 1 year, near term, issuing this additional $275,000 addresses that drop. But again, as Ben said, that is more of a policy decision for you all. If you want to see some of a drop, you don't have to issue that full $275,000 on top of the water portion. That's just showing you the max that you could issue while keeping a level tax impact. Last table I've got on table 8 is your geo debt capacity. So you may be wondering, why are we issuing general obligation debt, which is backed by your taxing authority for water projects? You can legally do that and pay into that with the water revenues. All that it means is it is backed legally by your taxes. So let's say the water utility would not have those revenues available to pay the debt service. You are legally able to levy for that portion of debt. On the other hand, for water projects, you can issue revenue bonds as you've done in the past, which therefore does not eat into your general obligation debt capacity. This is a relatively small amount of debt that we're looking to issue. Therefore, it does not mitigate the impact of your general obligation debt capacity too much. You can see you only go from 40% to about 43%, and that drops off pretty quickly thereafter, given one portion of this is only structured over a term of 1 year. So all that to say, you have plenty of geo debt capacity to still issue this on a geo pledge. You can see in 2027, for example, you still have $12 million of residual capacity. Each year that debt matures, that continues to get higher and higher. So we are not concerned at all in terms of where you are at. Typically, we say around 65 to 75% of your capacity. That's when you should start to be a little concerned, saying maybe we need to slow down. But again, in the future, when you have a larger amount of debt to issue, we could look at revenue bonds again for the utilities as necessary. So to kind of summarize on slide number 9, really what we're looking for from you all tonight is direction on how you want to address the funding of this capital improvement plan. So as we've outlined tonight, really the idea is that the streets, storm, and part of your water projects are to be funded with available cash on hand. Again, that's that borrowed money fund, 2024 water revenue bonds, and then some sewer funds that were planned to be used. Thereafter, we're recommending issuance of the state trust fund loan for 10-year term for water and a 1-year term pending state approval for the capital improvement projects. That portion is not necessarily a recommendation. It's more of, we need your direction. Do you want to issue the $275,000 of additional funds for capital projects as we have shown here? Or would you prefer to have further discussion and adjust how we have shown that? But what I can do before we have that discussion is show you what a sample timeline would look like if you were to proceed as it's been presented tonight. So next steps for a state trust fund loan would be really as soon as next week. I'd reach out to the state and worked with them to get a meeting to show them the structure that we have here and see if they will approve us to do this levy portion in a 1-year term. Assuming they then approve that, we'll then submit a formal application request to them, which just basically initiates the process for them to appropriate funds to you all for this loan. In May, Ben would receive an application in the mail that has to be physically filled out by hand. And then a resolution also is included in that packet, which is brought to you all for consideration. After you all approve and consider that resolution, Ben has to then mail it back to them. They only believe in snail mail for final approval. Their board then takes it to approval. They only meet twice a month. So if their next meeting based on this timeline would be in June, either June 2nd or June 16th, depending on the speed of the mail. They do have to receive the application and resolution at least 8 business days prior to their meeting in order for them to put it on the agenda. So that's why I have both dates on here in case we need to look at the latter date. And then assuming they approve, 7 to 10 days later, funding is available. It is a draw loan. You have up to 4 months to draw on the full amount. You do not have to draw on the full amount. So if prices change, things change and you decide not to draw on the full amount, you are not obligated to. With that, I will turn it back to you for any comments or discussion, writing any correction for us.
Thank you for the information. I do have questions. So the 270, well, we have an ambulance that we've sold. So did you incorporate that into this presentation? Because one of our future discussions is going to be, what do we do with that money?
Mm-hmm.
Do we pay it off or do we?
Yeah, I think Ben explained that a little bit earlier. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, and so I believe that I had talked to Greg and Ariana about that, saying that was going to be a question that the board was going to have. So I guess, President Castor, are you asking what her opinion is and how we should go about that? Or if that was, or as your question is, was that factored in?
Both.
Okay.
It was not included as cash being applied towards this, no. So that if you wanted to do that, you could. It's not factored in. Basically, issuing the $275,000 of additional debt would help mitigate that tax drop. So any additional cash applied would obviously therefore reduce that drop.
Well, it would increase it because we're going to be using the funds to pay off the loan that's currently there.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So I guess from Eller's perspective,
Mhm.
what is I guess the second part of this question then is what is your opinion on the approach? Do you favor, keeping the money and reducing the levy through not borrowing that 275, or do you believe that applying that surplus funds to that would be a better idea?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on if you want to keep a level tax impact. If that's still the goal of the village, that we want a level tax impact, I would recommend not applying that cash right now, given you're already applying so much other cash this year that has to be spent. It doesn't mean you can't apply that cash next year and hang on to it. You can obviously earn interest on it in the meantime if needed, and then spend it in the future. But given the anomaly of this year in terms of how much cash you're already applying, if you want to keep a level tax impact, I would not recommend applying any further cash. But again, that's completely a policy decision in terms of what do you want the tax impact to be. If you want to see it drop, then that's definitely something to consider.
What would be the effect of, so are we looking to get $275,000? Is that the ultimate goal, or is it more than that?
That would be the amount that you would need to issue in order to keep a level tax impact. So yes, that would be money that you're getting that you wouldn't need to spend this year. That would go towards 2027 projects. So you have done that in the past where you've borrowed for 2 years of projects at a time. So similar concept.
That's assuming we don't pay off the loan
Correct.
that's on the
On the
ambulance left. If we pay off the loan, that means the tax levy drop is larger. Therefore, maintaining a level tax means we borrow more.
What is the, what's a problem when the tax levy drops in this case? If we don't do this, maybe that would be a better way of it. What would be the effect?
Yeah, so the only, I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem. It's just more so if you plan to issue larger amounts of debt in the future, that would therefore result in your tax impact going up. It's just sending a mixed message in terms of budgeting practices and what your taxpayers are going to feel, right? Typically, we don't want to see an increase in that taxes year over year. So when we have a drop coming, you typically want to address that to try to keep it level so it doesn't go down. Taxpayers are super happy it
Right,
goes
okay.
down, but then 2
I
years
am
later,
hearing
it
it
now
right
goes
then,
up.
okay. Is there a way when we, because I know one of the things we can talk about with our budget is our reserves, kind of building that back up to a safe point where it was years past. Is the sale of the ambulance something that we can help accommodate that without implicating our taxes?
And that's kind of what I was getting at is we can, if the goal, because from going back to, I think it was February, the goal that I heard was that we want to reduce the tax levy. Well, it's two-part. One, if we don't want the ambulance, we don't want to be paying for debt on a vehicle that we don't have anymore. The second part was the impact on the tax levy itself. We want to reduce the tax levy that we levy for debt service. So we can actually accomplish, in my opinion, two birds, one stone type of thing, where if we reduce the amount that we're going to be borrowing by, taking from that 275,000 that Ariana talked about and reduce it to, let's just say, only borrowing 100,000, we see that drop of 175,000. Plus, then we don't need to spend the cash that we got from the ambulance. We can then put that towards the general fund balance, and increase that. So then we have that money on hand in case we have a shortfall in the future. So we can kind of accomplish both things where we reduce the tax levy while increasing the general fund balance, if you kind of know what I mean.
But then we're still paying on the loan. On a vehicle we don't have.
Yeah, we're still paying on the loan. That's the last outstanding issue, is that we don't have that vehicle, but we would be paying on the loan. I believe that I calculated out that if we canceled out that loan, the drop for the average taxpayer, I think, was going to be a total of like $32 to $39. I think it took the average household value that was recently updated with the revaluation. I think it was like between $32 and $39 of a tax drop from that. So again, it's more or less the principle of it that the board wants to tackle is, do you want to be paying debt on a vehicle that we don't have? Or is it kind of more of the goal of just reducing the tax levy altogether?
But we could also do that if we did this plan, right, separate, and then we just paid that loan off, we would still drop the tax levy, right? Right, because this doesn't take into account us reducing that debt.
Correct. So you'd be borrowing the 275, and then we would be spending the revenue from the ambulance to pay down that debt.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be kind of doing the exact same thing, except we wouldn't have the money in the general fund.
Correct. Yep. Well, it's two separate things.
It's two separate issues.
Two separate issues.
I'm not understanding why we'd go out and get $275,000 if we don't need it. Yeah. I mean, the tax rate would go down for 1 year. I don't necessarily see a problem with the rate going down a year. I'm having a hard time understanding why we go out and get $275,000 if we don't need it.
Because that would keep the tax rate the same. So because we'll have the dip And then when we borrow more for the 2027 project, the taxes are going to then shoot back up. So you're going to have a dip and then a bigger rise.
So it's a longer term view of it, and that the taxpayers, when you give them something, so to speak, if I'm as a taxpayer, if my taxes go down one year, but then they go up the next, I got all upset because my taxes went up. I forget about the year they went down.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I'm just trying to understand the wisdom in that.
Correct. So it's keeping everything level,
Yeah.
year over year. So
I think that's appropriate to think that way.
Do we need this 275 to fund the budget?
not necessarily, but we could use that to, and again, I'm still putting together the capital projects for next year. I know that there's going to be, I think, a DPW high lift truck that might be coming due. I know that there's smaller capital items, but I have not sat down yet, since I usually do that like at the beginning of June and really categorize and get an idea of what's coming due.
I think, have we had this in the past, this type of discussion? Because this one, I mean, the discussions we've had in the past are about construction and the 2 years with the state for that funding. But I'm having a hard time understanding why we would go out, get $275,000, because that's gonna cost us money simply to maintain a stable tax rate. So I'm just not understanding why we would do that.
So you're talking about over the long term with the interest payments, or?
Yes, why would we go out and, if I'm a homeowner, which I am, why would I go get money I don't need, pay on that money that I don't need, just to say, well, we kept it stable? That's what I'm not, if we have a dip, that's not so bad, is it? For 1 year?
For 1 year, it's not, but then again, if you issue more debt the following year and that then increases the taxes, then it's that roller coaster message where
So
taxes
by
went down 1 year, but then they went up the next.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So by taking on the 275 or 100 or whatever amount we would do theoretically, then that actually softens the potential of a bigger blow
in the
later on.
future.
So that the taxes might not, so they might go down now, but they might go up just that much and then even more if we don't take out the debt now. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, and really it would be structured as a term of 1 year. So the interest accrued, I think, was about $11,000. So yes, there is additional interest cost associated with doing so. But then in theory, next year, when you go to issue debt, you would no longer need to issue that $275,000 because you've already done so this year to help address that tax drop. So it does cost you the $11,000 in interest, but rather than having to incur that next year, you're addressing that now. So that way you have that level tax bill impact.
So is this looking like this is going to be a reoccurring theme for us?
No.
So this is
Because
kind of
this
an
is,
oddity?
yeah, this is all stemming from the arbitrage issue where, again, we were talking about the debt, and Ariana saw that we had a very high borrowed money fund balance. And she's like, wait a second, I think that we need to take a look at that. And that's kind of what I was emailing you guys about in my weekly updates is, by law, we have to spend that money, all the proceeds, by 3 years, correct? And so we have been able to, if we do a first in, first out type of approach, we're all good from the past year's proceeds. But now we want to make sure that, going forward, we can get all of that money spent, get out of here. We don't have to worry about the arbitrage anymore. And we can also structure it, I think, Ariana, where we spend some of it this year and some of it next year, because not all of it's going to be, coming due this year.
Correct. Yeah. So the way that we have it recommended right now is you'll have about 200,000 remaining in the borrowed money fund. Say that 3 times fast. Remaining for next year. So there may be additional proceeds to use to downsize the debt issue next year, but it won't be $1.3 million worth. Right? You're not going to have that additional cash to use for these projects in the future. This is kind of an anomaly, which is why, because you're not issuing that large amount of debt, you aren't seeing this impact on your taxes. In the future, though, if you continue to issue as you have in the past to fund your CIP, you'll see that large amount of debt coming, and therefore you'll see your tax impact go up.
How soon would we be using this money because we would get it Possibly when? When would it be funded?
End of June.
And then we would be using it when? In 27?
So the
Right
water
away?
portion would be this year, correct?
The water portion entirely in 26. It's only that 275,000 or whatever amount you decide that to be, that would be saved for 27.
And when you say the water park, you're talking about the water tower.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we don't do this, what happens?
Well, in terms of funding your 2026 CIP, if you don't issue any new debt, you'll have about $300,000 worth of water projects that you don't have funds for. Because this is using basically the max amount that we would recommend of your funds on hand. So at minimum, we'd recommend if you don't want to issue anything for 2027, issuing that $300,000 of debt to fund the water projects. So you could reduce the state trust fund loan to that portion. The thing with that though is it's all funded by the water revenues, right? So issuing that debt is not going to impact your net tax levy at all. That would be a zero impact, meaning what you see in that existing debt profile, that drop of 286,000 is what would then end up happening in terms of your tax impact.
So this is almost like a pre-funding,
Yeah. exactly.
pre-borrowing
Right, which you have done in the past. There's been plenty.
in
of
order to
borrowed for 2
keep
years.
a drop in taxes for 1 year, and then the following year, it would go up at least what they got and maybe some more.
Right.
And is our amount that we're looking at for capital funds similar the last few years? Like we're saying 1.3, 1.4 million right now in projects?
Yeah, and Ariana, correct me if I'm wrong, but this year it's around 1.6 because we have the added water tower
1.6,
cost.
right,
But
okay.
yes, typically it's between 1.1 and 1.3. Usually the lowest bidder comes below the projections of the engineer. I think 1 year we actually had it was less than $1 million.
Right.
But yeah, right around there.
So when you talk about next year, right? So you're thinking and then in the numbers somewhere in that 1.6, 1.5, that we will have what you say borrowed money fund, couple $100,000, and we would have the 275 that we took out this year to kind of make things level. So we already got a good start of close to 500, but we're going to have to for sure borrow another $1 million next year, which then you're saying we'll have to do a different type of structure. And then we can lay that structure out so this doesn't happen again. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, however, I will say, as you can see in the tax impact, there is going to be another drop this time next year because that 275,000 that we're issuing is only for a term of 1 year, right?
Yeah, okay.
So this will happen again, but correct, the amount of debt we'd issue next year, we would structure that drop out.
Yeah, so then that drop would then not occur, or at least wouldn't be as severe. And then going forward, that wouldn't be an issue anymore.
Correct.
That basically next year would be the last time, hopefully, that we have that weird drop anomaly. Because going forward, then now we know to be on the lookout for, okay, how much did we spend of the proceeds that we took out? Okay, we have $200,000 left in reserve. Now we can reduce the borrowing for next year because we have those funds, and then we can keep going with this. And we won't have the issue of all these funds building up. Which, and again, would be great because then it's reducing, because like we weren't doing that in the past. So we were borrowing for honestly more than we needed, because if we had these funds that we were spending them, we wouldn't have to have borrowed, like last year, whatever we borrowed, we wouldn't have to have borrowed that much. We could have borrowed less, which would have led to less taxes. So now kind of what we're doing is we're actually going to be probably lowering the taxes gradually over time by spending those proceeds instead of borrowing for that and then levying that levy.
Right. But it may not be almost $300,000 of a drop in 1 year. We could slowly drop that.
Correct.
50,000 a year or something like that. So it's not as large of an impact.
Because now we're better utilizing those proceeds.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so your recommendation is then to say it again? Do
So
this
it's really-
275?
It's really, yeah, if you'd want to borrow the 275,000 for the 27 capital projects for a term of 1 year, and then fund the remaining water portions that are not covered by funds on hand with the state trust fund loan. So overall, it's issuance of one state trust fund loan for about 577,000, just broken up into the two purposes as we've shown here. And then it would really just be, if that's how you want to proceed? Do you want funds by end of June? If so, we'd have to follow on this timeline I have here where we would really get moving on that about next.
Well, would there be an urgency to get the money?
Well, we wouldn't get it all the way. We'd draw it, right? It's a draw loan too.
If we don't,
Yeah,
if we don't.
it would be approved. We would want to get it approved and then we wouldn't have to draw on it until we need it.
Correct.
Right, but it means by the end of June, you have those funds available to draw as you need for a period of time up to 4 months.
Okay, so I might have missed the answer to this. So like this, we'll call this Plan A, but Plan A didn't address the ambulance.
Correct.
So what is your recommendation for that part of it? Because we're gonna sell the ambulance, that we're gonna have a choice to make whether to pay off the loan, right?
Well, I
Or,
think we paid off.
well, I'm not just saying that's the choice that we have before us.
Yeah,
Is there a
which Then
recommendation?
that'll show up as a drop in taxes. But that's separate from this structured capital improvement. and-
Doesn't matter.
I mean, if you wanted, we can run this exact same scenario to show you exactly what the tax impact would be with the payoff of the ambulance early. And then that likely will change the amount that we'd be recommending for the 27 projects. So that 275,000 that you see to keep a level impact, if you're paying off your existing debt, obviously you're gonna have a larger drop, right? So then we would likely recommend a higher amount of 275,000. So that way you don't see that tax impact drop. If you want to see a tax impact drop of something smaller, then we could level that in kind of based on that. So that we have time, if there's feedback that you want, where you want additional scenarios, we can run that and provide it to Ben and get that to you guys via email, kind of give us direction from there. That's perfectly fine too. So really, that's kind of the direction we're looking for is how do you want to see it?
I think that would help because one of our discussions prior to this was we have the proceeds from the ambulance, I think 140 and change.
Around that, I think it's
Around that.
139.
So I think part of our discussion would be, do we pay that off or do we just keep making the payments on that? So I think that discussion plays into this.
Ariana, do you have in front of you, I think I'm not actually connected to the server, but I didn't know if you knew what the annual debt obligations were for that ambulance.
Laptop, I don't have it printed out in this though.
Don't
Yeah.
bring that.
But
Okay.
If you wanted to give me a minute, I can.
I just wanted to, I think that would be also a perspective of, again, how much tax money is going to paying off that
Right, and
ambulance.
what the impact would be.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have that immediately available.
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
not
something-
connected to the server, so I can't access it right now, but.
Yeah, it's something that I could easily run and provide to you as supplemental information. I mean, this action tonight isn't a formal like resolution or motion or
Right.
anything. It's really just consensus. So if you're all comfortable with that, I can run those scenarios, provide it to Ben, circulate it with the group, and then we can either come back, present again before making a decision, or we can get direction from Ben, however you guys would want to proceed. We really just wanted to get this in front of you because you know it's a lot. There's a lot of decisions to be made here. So this is just kind of the preliminary conversation. This timeline is not something you're beholden to by any means.
And since we don't need the funds right away, I don't,
Mhm.
I think we have a little bit of time, but I think the ambulance discussion would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
And I think a lot of the expenses actually for the water would not be incurred until late summer to early fall when we actually do the water tower project.
Right, which that's good news. And you have those funds on hand that can buy you time as well.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely have time.
Perfect.
We can slow roll this.
Okay, great.
That helps.
That's very, very helpful though for me. That's
Okay,
very good.
awesome.
Yeah, that was the goal, trying to get this in front of you, because I told Ariana, I was like, this is a lot.
Mhm.
It's a lot for me and her, and we've done this quite a bit. So we again wanted to get it in front of you, kind of talk about it,
Mhm.
get everybody's brains working on it, and then come back with
Do we
any
need a
questions.
motion? Just
From Island,
explore the
I don't know.
additional.
Internally you do.
Okay.
No, I don't think we need a motion at this time.
Okay, then, yeah, I've got my marching orders, so I'll regroup with Ben from here, and that'll also give you all time to think about the tax impact and what your policy goals are for that too.
Yeah.
So we can revisit that at a future conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Whether, if I could just, one more comment, then if by our next meeting, we don't even have all those scenarios done, could we still talk about like how did you phrase that, just what our goals are? If negative tax impact is our goal or, some other goal. It'd be good to continue that
Yeah.
discussion as an
Yeah.
agenda item. then.
Yeah, and I mean she's good at her job.
Yeah,
you-
I'll have this done this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just thought it'd be helpful as a board to keep talking about this, so we can clarify what.
Ariane,
our
are you
goals
available for May 5th?
And
Yeah,
then
May 5th.
we'd be looking for your recommendation on that as well.
Yeah, I am open that night. So yeah, I could definitely bring back the scenarios and we can
Okay.
continue the conversation at that time.
I'm free too.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank you.
Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Does someone want to turn on the lights, please?
Oh, I like the mood.
Rest of
lighting.
them.
Dark in here. Dark in here. Falling asleep. Item D, new business. Discussion, possible action on how to fill trustee seat vacated by Patricia Tarks.
So
Thank you.
not to rub it into the other trustees' face, but Miss Patricia Tarks did receive the most number of votes.
I'd like a
on-
recount.
on
Four
the
votes.
April-
Four
on
votes.
the election.
I think
So
that's too close. Recount.
exactly. But we kind of know the circumstances surrounding that. So she turned in her papers, and then had some personal matters that she needed to attend to, which caused her to move out of the village. The village ordinances do state that you must be a resident of the village to be able to serve in the seat of trustee. So she, while we could not remove her from the ballot because she was a certified candidate at that time, she did not, obviously she does not meet the requirements to be able to take the oath and sit as the trustee. So that seat is now vacant. So now we just need to declare how we're going to go about filling that seat. Historically, we have gone out and got applications from individuals, and then interviewed and appointed the individual. So I talked with President Kasdorf, and he seems to be in agreement with that. So just bring it to the board for actual action on how we want to do that.
I am also in agreement with that. Post it, see who we get, interview them, plug it in.
It's worked really well.
Says the left side of the panel.
Anyone have any other ways or discussion on that? Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the motion is then to fulfill it by posting and getting, doing interviews.
And by appointment. Yep.
By appointment. Okay, I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On opposition, say nay. Motion passes. We're adjourned at 7:04. Thank you.
4. Oh, it just clicked.